we're going to expose the reality behind a massive global supply chain choke point. If you've been following along with us, you know we look at the shifting global economy. But today, we're looking at something way more foundational. We're talking about a strategic advantage that is so deeply embedded into our world, it operates almost completely unseen. Let's get right into it.
Let's make this super personal for a second. Think about the smartphone in your pocket, or the electric vehicle you might drive, the laptop you're using. We're even talking about those massive wind turbines generating clean energy, MRI machines in hospitals, and F-35 fighter jets up in the skies. Every single one of these cutting-edge technologies fundamentally shares one critical secret ingredient. They all rely on a very specific set of minerals that, get this, one single country almost completely controls.
That secret ingredient boils down to the number 17. 17 rare earth elements on the periodic table. Most people have honestly never even heard of them. We're talking tongue twisters like Dysprosium, Terbium, Neodymium, Yttrium, and Samarium. Try saying those 5 times fast. But specifically, it's the heavy rare earths like Dysprosium and Terbium that are absolutely crucial here. Without them, the permanent magnets that make all our modern tech function, they simply wouldn't exist. No way.
Now, let's clear up a massive misconception right off the bat. When we hear the phrase rare earth, we automatically assume these things are super hard to find, right? Actually, scratch that. They aren't rare in the ground at all. They're all over the world, including right here in the United States. The real bottleneck? It isn't the mining. The true choke point is the incredibly complex processing required to refine them. Turning dirty rock into high-tech magnets requires crushing, separating, and refining raw ore into extreme purities. It's an intensely demanding, chemically complex process.
And here's where the brutal reality of the supply chain hits. While China controls about 70% of global rare earth mining, which, is already a lot, they maintain a staggering 90% chokehold on heavy rare earth processing. 90%. Let that sink in for a second. That means even if another country digs the raw rock out of the ground, they almost always have to ship it right over to China to make it actually usable. It creates this massive, singular point of failure for the entire global economy.
Part 1. Building the 30-year monopoly. Let's look at exactly how we got into this precarious situation.
You see, this wasn't some random accident. This strategic vision was laid out over 40 years ago, back in the 1980s, by Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping. He bluntly stated, "The Middle East has oil, China has rare earths." He completely understood the future. He recognized that just like the 20th century economy was entirely built around oil, these 17 specific elements were going to become the foundational power source of the 21st century.
Watching this deliberate economic strategy play out over time is fascinating. Back in the 1980s, the United States actually dominated rare earth production with the Molycorp mine in California. But then, in the 1990s, China kicked its strategy into high gear. By 2002, entirely unable to compete with the new rock-bottom pricing, the U.S. Molycorp mine closed up shop, which effectively killed America's rare earth industry. Fast forward to 2015, Beijing publicly announces its Made in China 2025 plan, explicitly targeting rare earth dominance as a national security objective. And that steady, relentless march brings us right to the critical events of 2025.
So how exactly did they execute this massive shift? Well, China's economic statecraft relied on 3 highly effective steps to edge out competitors. First up, undercut. They flooded the market with cheap rare earths to make foreign competition economically impossible. Second, acquire. They went around buying up global mining rights and processing companies. And third, and honestly, this is perhaps the most brilliant move, they patented the complex processing technology. They legally locked up the refining methods so tightly that even if you had the ore, you couldn't process it without paying them. They made themselves literally indispensable.
Part 2. The 2025 supply shock. This brings us right to a breaking point.
In April 2025, responding to U.S. tariffs, China surgically deployed export controls on rare earth elements and related magnets. Basically, they took this decades-in-the-making choke point and turned it into a live, active weapon. The shock to the system was immediate. Look at the total collapse in yttrium. This is a critical thermal coating used to literally prevent jet engines from melting in midair. In the 8 months before the controls hit, the U.S. imported 333 tons. In the 8 months after, just 17 tons. That is a staggering drop. And hey, this wasn't just some abstract data on a spreadsheet. It had real, immediate, real-world impacts. U.S. aerospace manufacturers had to instantly trigger emergency rationing of yttrium. The automotive industry stared down total EV factory shutdowns because, well, you can't build an EV motor without permanent magnets, which require dysprosium and terbium. Even the Pentagon raised emergency alerts because their ability to replenish munition stockpiles was severely strained. Just a surgical, partial control nearly brought vast swaths of the economy to an absolute standstill.
But the story doesn't end there. In October 2025, there was this highly celebrated trade truce. Headlines were cheering, everyone was thrilled that both sides agreed to de-escalate. But if you look at the legal reality, as analyzed impartially by trade experts, it is so much more sobering. The underlying licensing infrastructure that China built in April remained fully operational. The truce was merely a one-year pause on further escalations until November 2026. The weapon wasn't disarmed at all, the safety was just temporarily clicked on.
Part 3. Racing to find alternatives. Faced with this stark reality, the rest of the world is now desperately scrambling.
We're now witnessing the launch of the most aggressive critical minerals campaign in American history. Billions are flowing. We're seeing the launch of Project Vault, which is a massive national stockpile program. The Exim Bank has issued nearly $4 billion in commitments to back rare earth projects globally. And in April 2026, USA Rare Earths agreed to a massive $2.8 billion acquisition of Brazil's Cerro Verde. That's one of the very few facilities outside China that has both heavy rare earths and a processing plant. The money is absolutely pouring in right now.
But here's the catch. There is an immense, brutal gap. Mining and processing have incredibly long lead times. I mean, permitting alone takes years. Look at the Australian company Lynas, which is the only major commercial refiner outside of China. In the first quarter of 2026, they produced just 8 tons of dysprosium and terbium combined. Now, compare that to the annual global demand, which requires thousands of tons. Just do the math on that gap. You simply cannot build a rare earth refinery overnight, no matter how much money you throw at it.
I'll pause to let this mathematical reality really set in. According to projections by McKinsey, even with all these multi-billion-dollar investments across the globe, by the year 2035, non-Chinese sources will meet less than 20% of the global demand for these specific heavy rare earths. That means in 9 years, after maximum effort, the entire world will still be more than 80% dependent on a single source.
Part 4. The physics of power.
Here's the thing. Physics and geology simply do not negotiate with political timelines. Unlike oil, where we can eventually switch to solar or natural gas, there is currently no synthetic replacement for the heat resistance of terbium or the magnetic properties of dysprosium. Just look at what's at stake here. Every single emerging technology the global economy is betting its future on, AI server hardware, advanced robotics, hypersonic weapons, deep-sea radar systems, and the literal transformers that keep our national power grid running, every single one of them runs on permanent magnets that currently require China's processing monopoly to exist. Simply put, whoever controls these materials controls the century.
So as we wrap up this explainer, we have to look toward the only realistic path forward, which is leapfrogging. Companies like Apple are already trying to shift to 100% recycled rare earths for their magnets, hoping to bypass the supply chain entirely. But at a national, industrial scale, recycling moves incredibly slowly. So I want to leave you with this provocative question to ponder. Can America and the rest of the world innovate and build an alternative supply chain before this dependency fully halts the global economy? Can innovation truly outrace geology and geopolitics? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Stay curious.